Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Festival of Nature 2022. My name is Sam Langford. I am the digital producer for the Festival of Nature, and I'm so delighted to be back with our digital programme. The Festival of Nature is taking place it started yesterday and it's running until Saturday, the 18th of June. And we're thrilled to be returning to both live and online events. And together with our Natural History Consortium partners, we've got a lineup of nature walks and talks. We've got family activities, wildlife workshops. And after 2 years of developing our digital offer, we're also bringing you a series of interactive online events, of which you're here watching one right now. If you're watching live, I can see there's people watching live. Say hello to us in the chat. If you're watching back later, where were you? Why weren't you here live? But hello and welcome anyway. We are delighted to be opening with a lovely interview this morning. We're going to welcome in our first guest. Please, everyone, say hello to the Field Programme Support Manager for Blue Ventures. It is Nicola Bassett. Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
Hi, good morning, Sam. Morning, everybody from sunny Bristol.
So I'm going to open up with a very, very simple question, I suppose, is who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? What an existential question. My name is Nicola, and I, as you said, my job title is Field Programme Support Manager, but that's quite a misnomer for anyone that doesn't work for BV. So I support our country programmes. Blue Ventures works in 14 countries across the globe, and I support our teams in 3 of those. Indonesia and Timor-Leste, which is a tiny country in the Indonesian archipelago, and Belize in Central America. So supporting the teams there on a lot of behind the scenes things such as project management, grant management, and the day-to-day budgets and kind of those strategic conversations that people don't often hear about when they want to find out about our work.
So for folks at home who might be less familiar with the work of Blue Ventures, could you tell us a little bit more about who Blue Ventures are?
Yes, so in a nutshell, Blue Ventures is a marine conservation organisation, but I think, and I like to describe them as going a bit further than that, and perhaps from an angle that people wouldn't necessarily think of when they think of direct marine conservation. We work with communities who are on the front line of the climate crisis and who rely on coastal resources for their livelihoods. So there is an element of kind of human rights to our work and also food security. So we work with these communities across the tropics, across these 14 different countries in East Africa, in Asia and Central America, to really give them the tools to manage these marine resources in their coastal areas themselves, be that managing their mangrove forests that they live and work within in West Kalimantan in Indonesia, or managing the octopus fisheries when the tide goes out in southwest Madagascar. Lots of the reefs are exposed, and the women mainly, rather than men, which you might expect to go fishing, women will go and glean and fish for these octopus. So coastal communities will be kind of using these resources for their livelihoods, and we help to manage those.
So in terms of, like, that's quite a wide spread across the globe, whether it is like Southeast Asia or Central America, that's quite a diverse number of different communities that you'll be working with. And I guess they've all got different and similar challenges they're facing and wants and needs. I imagine there's like quite a range of things going on there in these communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking Belize, for example, they have a kind of a marine management structure that is already in place, but it's been quite top down. So the governments have been very instrumental in marking out areas that are protected, and therefore there are limitations on how and when people can fish, yet they didn't necessarily involve communities as much as the communities would have liked or could have been engaged in. So we're working with communities there to kind of build their capacities in their cooperatives to attend these meetings with governments and local marine park managers. Whereas in Indonesia, for example, or Southwest Madagascar, it's going from the grassroots level, so educating the communities on how their fisheries can reproduce and why they're sometimes seeing them decreasing, and what they can do to enable the restoration of the habitats, but also get more fish kind of for the future. And when I talk about fisheries, I know that's a very not a term that people would use every day. So I mean kind of a certain species of fish that people will go out and fish, or a certain area in which people go out to fish.
Yeah, I guess when I hear the word fisheries, I think of it very much in a UK context, and I start to think of like a salmon farm off the west coast of Scotland, which obviously is part of that conversation, but like it just shows that there is quite a range of meanings to that term, isn't it? Like in terms of what people are fishing in their fisheries. In terms of working with these communities across the globe, there are going to be, I imagine, a lot of similarities in challenges they're facing based on threats that we're seeing to life in the ocean. What are the biggest threats to life in the ocean at the moment?
That's quite a big question. We've got threats from overfishing, which we're ever depleting fish stocks, and more people trying to compete to fish, especially in coastal waters. And trawling is one of the main factors to this overfishing. And trawling is where a ship is carrying a big heavy net, which is weighted and is towed along the seabed. And it's quite destructive to the actual habitats in which these marine species will live. So trawling will decimate habitats and also pollution. It's quite a polluting way of fishing. And then if they're coming into these coastal waters where these local communities and small scale fishers are fishing just for their livelihoods, you have this huge amount of conflict between the two. So that's quite a threat to these small scale fishers, but also to the marine ecosystems themselves. Conversation about threats can't go ahead without talking about climate change. This kind of seems to appear everywhere these days, but it's true. It's changing our ocean ecosystems every year through warming the oceans and acidification of coral reefs, changing these habitats in which all of these species are living.
So I was actually, there was like 2 points in there that I was thinking about, and you made some really good points on in terms of the conflict that you see between what I imagine would be kind of subsistence fishing or subsistence farming for people that are doing it more for a local community for themselves versus this kind of international trawlers that come along and take everything away. Well, obviously you've said there's conflicts, but what sort of kind of mediation needs to be in place in order for them both to be happy, but also to try and reduce the impacts caused by the large scale trawling?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it's something that Blue Ventures are working with a coalition of partners on. We just last year launched the Transform Bottom Trawling Coalition, which people can find on the website. I saw you the website going on the bottom of the screen. And it's about kind of advocating for these coastal communities who have very, very few rights over their coastal ecosystems that they rely on, educating governments that these kind of millions of fishers around the world that rely on these resources, they're contributing to economies, and kind of the unseen workers, if you like, contributing to all of these supply chains, and they are only able to fish in these coastal regions. So if trawlers are able to and allowed to come into these coastal regions, they're not only taking the resources, but they are damaging the environments for future generations as well. So kind of ensuring that those conversations are happening between local governments, national governments, and networks of these small-scale fishers and NGOs like ours and local NGOs that are working to support them in that. But it's a long road.
Yeah, I can imagine it being like a really difficult discussion to be having on like multiple levels, but knowing that the end goal's worth it, but it's going to take quite a long time to get there, I imagine. And with it being that kind of multi-layered threats to the ocean, whether it is large-scale fishing or you mentioned climate change, what sorts of impacts are being felt within communities on the effects of climate change? Because I imagine there must be quite a lot of it happening, but do we know what people are reporting as like seeing change as a result of climate change?
Yeah, absolutely. And just visiting these communities, you get lots of testimonials and first-hand experiences of this. A lot of it is habitat degradation and the ecosystems in which they once found these species and were able to fish for just a few hours and get a lot of catch back is fascinating. And I think you've got a video of one of our community members in Madagascar, Kukuli, talking about before we started working.
Okay, I haven't seen this, so I'm really excited to see what has been talked about. So hope everyone else at home enjoys. Here we go.
Italuha, di Batuhara ni pesa kami zao wote sinamu sinisi di kap di kumakaga. Ami zao bo sinis. Sachi taluma sija stena ni ula mare tu nang kala kay huri taro sachi huri taro dam zao. Pa bui di kau zai huri taro la marai. Batu zai huri taro fa famtaranu aviko.
Turita nan chimituba maturita tato patato ni marumare chimisi hatadu ho chinis viti a viti vara vau mi hakte manani vau hanani ki fajada ka fachita ko ti urita ka tau kino amira haire I beta kadai na ka sere ki ko maru mutu kutira to lava o iti lava na mana kaniri tutia lavanga na kan tui na lava ingi Kaya isa tete utareng itu mga tiraron ko na isa lang misvatia tanan kiu ay de mat kiu mesuri dai
Devastating to see the impacts. Like you can physically see it there in terms of that's coral that they're showing, and that coral is all dead and bleached.
Yeah.
I imagine. Oh no, on you go.
No, I was about to say that, and this is the reality of these women who have been fishing here for years, and it's the only place that they can can get the octopus and fish out here, and getting these testimonials of what it used to be like is kind of is devastating, but it's their reality, and you can't really blame them for wanting to fish further, harder, for longer if and when they do get money.
Yeah, it's your life, isn't it? Like yeah. And I can imagine particularly when it comes to octopus, because I know that they can take, in some cases, can take up to 3 years to reach maturity and get into breeding. So if they're starting to disappear, re-establishing those populations to allow them to fish again is going to be incredibly difficult, I imagine. And people will move on and
actually, sorry to kind of dispel something live video, but actually octopus is one of the kind of, well, some species are some of the fastest growing. And we have been using octopus as this kind of this catalyst to start talking about marine conservation with communities in Southwest Madagascar and around the globe, and such as Kukuli, who we saw there, in order to show them how marine management and closing an area to protect it for a very short period of time, in some cases just 6 months, can really allow the species to recover. And then when they open it, or they are allowed to start fishing in this area again, the numbers of octopus, the weight and the size has increased kind of tenfold, and the money they can get from that can double.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happily proven wrong on that.
Yeah.
No, that is really good.
Yeah, it's this model of kind of temporary closures that has kind of been this catalyst to start talking to communities and listening to where they fish, what they need kind of from us in order to manage their marine resources, and it's listening to which species are most important to them. So in Southwest Madagascar, it's the octopus. In communities in West Kalimantan in Indonesia, it's mud crabs that you find in the mangroves, and we work with communities to develop sets of rules that are unique to these communities that are fishing in those areas. So using local customary rules such as adat ceremonies in Indonesia to close these areas of rivers or reefs for a set period of time, and then opening them again.
Well, that's just like really nice to hear the ways that in which that you can have that really positive impact. Because I think I'm used to it. I imagine a lot of people who are watching at home are used to the doom and gloom stories. So to hear things like shutting an area and providing a form of an action plan, I guess, in which to allow an area to recover, is just like fantastic news to hear.
Yeah, and it's sometimes a bit of an oxymoron as well, because you're thinking, right, you just said you work in marine conservation, yet you're working with small-scale fishers and communities to help them fish more. But it's this education behind it. It's working with communities that are on the front line of climate change, of these diminishing fish stocks, and educating them on why that's happening and how they can steward their ecosystems and these habitats for future generations in order for it to become sustainable. And we don't have a video of it here, but there was a trip some colleagues did to Zanzibar just a few months ago, and they were talking to some of the community members and the local NGO that we partner and support out there. And there was one lady who I forget the name of, quite embarrassing, who was, her job is this marine educator. Now in the West and England, our biology lessons teach us about reproduction, yet in this community in Zanzibar, their belief was that fish stocks never decreased. It was just God would reward them, and whenever it rained, there would just magically be more fish. So the idea of when they fish, they wouldn't be replaced immediately it seems, the fact that they need to manage their fish stocks was something that this our partner needed to educate them on the reproductive cycle, and then the management goes from there, really.
I imagine those cultural beliefs have been instilled over a long period of time where the stocks have replenished because they haven't been demolished in the same way as they have in the past 100 years. So yeah, I can imagine that being, again, quite difficult to work with them in order to get them to change that way of thinking, I guess, to see how it actually is impacted.
Difficult, but also incredibly rewarding. And you're
Yeah.
working, like I said, you're working with people who have the traditional knowledge of fishing grounds and how they fish and where they fish. And these are the people that we can leverage, for want of a better word, to help conserve marine ecosystems and supporting them in their livelihoods at the same time.
So we've talked for 20 minutes. Geez, that time is just going almost very quickly. I wanted to come on to think specifically more about what you get most excited about in the work that you do. What excites you most about your work?
Well, the fact that 20 minutes has gone and I feel like I've been chatting for 2 minutes. I could chat all day. It is working with people. It's working with these communities, as I mentioned a lot in the last 20 minutes, and giving them the knowledge and the power they already have the knowledge. It's kind of giving them the tools to use that and utilize everything that they've got. They have the knowledge, and the phrase "knowledge is power." Everybody knows that, but what is that knowledge? It's the data. As soon as they have the number of fish that have been caught when a closure is opened compared to when it before it was put in place. It's the going out on surveys and doing drone surveys for how many hectares of mangroves there was before they were able to protect it and afterwards. And it's when you are working with communities to train them, to give them this ability to collect data, especially through the use of technology, for me is fascinating. And we're using technology more and more. For example, collecting data when fishers come in and land their catch. We have groups, mainly women, who will be there to assess what's been caught, the weights, and the sizes of whatever species that will be, octopus or mud crab or just reef fish. And they're using mobiles, so just normal smartphones with an app on there. We use kind of Kobo Toolbox or Open Data Kit, and that enables the data just to go straight into the cloud, and our teams in country and the supporting teams in the UK can use that and put them into visualizations incredibly quickly in order to then show the community what has happened in the last 6 months. And then they can use that information to manage the next closure. When will it be the same length of time? Will it be a slightly different area? Will the same tools and fishing gear be allowed in? And I think you've got some images of people using these. So the next image, this is some community members in the Comoros Islands, which is just the northwest of Madagascar in the Mozambique Channel, using mobiles and tablets to collect data. I think they're waiting for fishers to come in. What else have we got? Again, you've got the octopus line. I think this is in Indonesia. You've got, I think this is the training happening. So you would have this book where people are writing it in by hand and another community member there using mobile to kind of fill in the form. It's just on an app of the length, the weight. You can see the scales in the bottom right-hand corner.
It's really great to see them using what for us, like for me, looking at that to be fairly easy to pick up and use technology. It's not like heavily scientific equipment. It's something that when you pick up and use could be a little bit more intuitive to get to grips with. So it's great to see that it can be something like a tablet or a phone that can help really have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can, as I mentioned, it means that there's less room for error, and you can get the data and the numbers and what these individual numbers mean back to the communities as soon as possible. And these data feedback sessions that you would have with the community members who are managing a certain closure or fisheries management measure, and then they can have these discussions which ourselves or our partners, local NGOs, would facilitate to understand how the community would like to change. And here we go, something a little bit different. You've got drones here. I think this is the local government being trained in how to map an area of mangroves.
And I imagine mangroves in particular being such an important habitat for multiple reasons, whether it is for fish, but also for protection from the ocean, I guess, as well, because they act as a buffer for waves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they're degrading, that has different knock-on effects on communities, I imagine.
And I have just learned about all of the different livelihoods that you can get from mangroves that aren't just fish or cutting mangroves down for timber. You can make tea, you can get sap from different species of mangroves, which are all alternative livelihoods. Yeah,
We've got one more as well in here.
Yeah,
this looks like the fun bit, getting to
yeah, exactly.
Getting to play with the toy.
Everyone wants to have a go.
Awesome. I think it was the last of the slides. It is.
Yeah.
We're very quickly coming to our half an hour point, which is what we'd scheduled in for us to be chatting. People watching this stream are going to be, I imagine, mostly watching from the United Kingdom, and perhaps thinking about ways that they can help support our oceans and the people who use them. What sorts of actions for nature or advice would you give that people can make in order to help protect the oceans and the life that lives in it?
Yeah, this is always the $1 million question, isn't it? You can feel very far away from these communities that we've just seen training on drone mapping in Indonesia. The biggest piece of advice I would give is educate yourself. These are communities in far-flung places. It can take days and multiple modes of transport to get to. Yet the supply chains and fisheries which they are contributing to may influence you in different ways. The trawling that I mentioned earlier. Educate yourself on where your food is coming from, how it's being caught, and any campaigns that you're aware of, helping to advocate for those who can't or struggle to themselves. We've got this Transform Bottom Trawling coalition that started last year. We've got loads and loads of resources on our website. You can see the link at the bottom of the page. And if you are traveling and are lucky enough to visit these places, then go local. Seek out homestays, which are businesses or ecotourism activities which have been set up most often by communities which are on the coast. You will be supporting their livelihoods by choosing to do those activities rather than perhaps staying in a hotel or going on a guided snorkeling visit.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming to chat with us today. Was there anything else you wanted to share? Was there any more images or videos or anything that we wanted to share before we wrap up?
Oh yes, so you obviously saw the kind of devastation of the reefs, and Kukuli and her friend describing what it was like before. But I think there's a video of how excited they are about this octopus closure, which is reopening in a few weeks' time. And we're really good to see that one.
Okay, let's go for it. Again,
Yeah.
really excited to see this. Here we go.
Pamarin ke voai rite de pamarin ke patavela pamunta tu i buci mangano tavela pamunta rue. Masua sekolah ini mi voa tengah mahas tada mar. Dafa mahasu de mi tu dita. Mar tiara hasteng. Ni vidi tenga tu via fatang si siki satu. Ha? Ora ta.
Lafa mivoa reserva io tsy misy raha magnitikitiky ty fo fa falifaly avao i. Na i tsy mahita androany na tsy mahita hamaray, tsy maintsy falifaly avao i fa satria regny raha ho hita avao. Izay gny fermentira tsy mampijaly fa mampitombo sady sahala olo magnajary jala agnaty banka agny tegna manao fermentira igny. Ka lafa voha ao amizay rehegny tsy sarotsy fiaigna ao amy fa la tena normaly soa ia satria malay ia nagnajary ka nagnajary sady nampitombo.
That's a really nice way to end. Really nice to see what's clearly been really good public engagement within these communities to find out knowledge that they have, what they require, and then working with them on these closures that allow them to get back to the life that they used to have and now I imagine are working towards having again. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
My pleasure. I think it's a really good way of describing it. You're putting money away in the bank for the future. So yeah. I'm glad to end on the voices of our communities there.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much, Nick, for coming to speak to us today. Folks, please do go and check out the Blue Ventures website, which I had. Bring it back up on the screen again, blueventures.org. I will take that away. I'm now going to use the power that I have to just make it be me on the screen, which is always, I feel so powerful when I do this. Thanks, Nick. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Folks, thank you so much for those of you who've been watching along for the first of our online digital events as part of the Festival of Nature 2022. We have got loads more happening, and we've got something happening in 90 minutes. We're going to have a draw along with Lauren Cook, where we are going to be drawing a mason bee and hearing from the curator of entomology at the Hunterian Museum, which is going to be really fascinating, really exciting. I'm going to be having a go at drawing, which I'm not very good at, but I'm going to try and do it, talking and drawing at the same time. You should come along and watch it just for that. Never mind all of the amazing discussion that we're going to have. Please do follow along on our social channels, whether it is on Facebook, on Twitter, or on Instagram. We were sharing information about all of the events that are going on, whether they are in person in Bristol and Bath or online. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. We'll see you all very soon for some more content as part of the Festival of Nature 2022. Take care.